Hello everyone, it's a Saturday afternoon here in sunny California, and basically I'm jumping right back in. Got a few things I'm working on today. Right now there's a process in the system that allows you to actually share a community, a building, or a thing, and it gets sent over to my shared server. Then when others want to look for new things to build, they can actually search the database there and find different items and click a button and download them. Well, in the past couple days, we wrote some code that allowed you to download the different items, and now I'm going to do its counterpart, which is being able to send the whole file back up to my server. And we're going to do some things about security later on, but for now I just want to get the nuts and bolts of it in place, and then I'll be applying a different security to it after the fact. So for starters, I'm going to do the community item, and we're going to walk our way through it. So here we go, off we went. Okay, so and let's see. So what I've started with is I took a copy of the communities page, because that's pretty much the closest one. That, well, actually it's the community, not communities, but the community page, because normally what you do is you type this one, you send it a community ID, and then it brings back certain data about the root community and all of its different properties. The way this particular file needs to go is, first of all, there's going to be no identifying characteristics about it, so it will upload, we'll keep the same community ID. We do not have to generate new IDs, but at the same time, one of the things we're going to do is we're not going to take identifying information such as analytics ID. We can keep the building name that you did, we can keep the shared name and stuff like that, but it's limited on what it's going to actually use. So we'll do, we're going to basically package it up and send it to the server. So, and then when I write the process to receive it on my server end, that's when we're really going to scrub the data and make sure that things are filled in. And if there's any blanks where I need a value, such as the community name, I can throw in some default names or default values. I can kind of manipulate that end of it and make sure that it's being received the way I expect to receive it. Since this code is in the user's hands, I will not necessarily know what's being sent to me until I receive it, and then it has to be some recognizable format for me to even use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to establish how it exports the file right now. So for starters, the first thing is we're going to select, we know that the community ID comes in, and we're grabbing the variable right there. So let's see, first thing we're going to do is we're going to select all from, and we're going to make that, we'll get rid of that line because we don't need that information. We're going to get the communities, which is right there, and where community is that, and I'm not looking for something that's deleted, so there is no order by, but it is a limit 1. I'm only expecting 1 community. Limit 1. Okay, so it's a community that's not deleted, that's on your local system, and we're grabbing the values right here. So then once I've done that, we're going to build a number of arrays is what we're going to do, and then we're going to piece them together in the way that we expect them to be transferred over at the end. So I'm going to do community array, and this particular one is going to come from, well, let's do this in a way that we create the, let's do all the arrays up on top just so that they all kind of sit together in the code. It's kind of like when we're declaring all of our variables. Just so you know, here's the breakdown of it. Okay. We have the community. We're going to do this in a particular order. Connecting grids. Then we're going to do the action zones, which are the load zones basically, and door openings and different things that it uses. Then we will do community molds. This is going to be a pretty long page by the time we get it done, but it'll be all the information needed by one. Now, normally when we browse, just so you know, these are pulled separately. Each one, if you look in the connect directory, is pulling them separately based on what you're trying to get. The reason for doing that is I don't want too much information brought back at any one time, or I don't want to bring back things that I'm not ready to use. So I've made them different calls so that they happen quickly, they can be loaded into the system without interfering with the current animations that are going on. So by breaking them down into different pieces, it actually flows better during the flow of using it. But when you're in admin and you want to upload something, now we're talking about down and dirty, gritty, just get the files over to the other server and be done with the process. So since we're not dependent on the animation running while you're in the admin mode for this particular function, let me keep that stipulated, then I can allow a little bit more processing power to go there to be able to send it without causing any trouble with the system. So we have community molds. Then the next one we have is mold points, in case there's any particular type of community molds that use mold points. Then we have we're going to do uploads. Then we'll do, there's a couple more here, and it's upload objects. I know this has quite a few pieces together, but once we do one, building will become easier because then I only have to customize the ones that go to building instead, but it'll be some of the same processes. So yeah, bear with me, we'll get these parts in place. And then the other one is upload object animations. And I think that should do that part of it. Okay, those are the pieces that are used by a community. And just to make sure, let's see, action zones, avatar animations, no. Building molds and buildings, no. Menu items, no. Roles, settings. I added a table settings yesterday, and I haven't done all the code for that, so that's another thing that's going to come up here. When you're using stuff and you just need to, hey, I just need to store a setting in the database, you need to be able to throw a value or a handful of values in an array to it. So I created a table for storing those values, and we'll work on some process to be able to get them out. But that'll actually help when people want to save settings for their for the plugins and different things. So I want to make sure that that's a nice, clean, easy way. We have some way of storing settings without causing any trouble there. That should take care of those pieces. User avatar colors, okay, we don't need any of those. Users, user and role, no. Okay, so, web images, there is one more. Web images are used by, let's say you create a button on the screen and when you hover over it goes to another image, and then if you click it, it goes to a different image. That's the kind of stuff web images do. Okay, so we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different tables that we're going to hit, grab the results, and then format them in a way that can be added to what we're doing. So, okay, so first one is community. We're going to say community here. Also, notice I have a I value. We're going to put that right here because we're going to be resetting that each time we do an array. To keep things simple, I know the community is only one community, so we don't really need to put that in an array and have a incremental value or anything because we're only expecting one community to get returned. So that's not so much of the issue with this one, but I want it to be consistent. So on the other end, when I check my arrays and find out what values are brought in, if one's a community array, then one's a connecting grid array, then action zones, then a community molds, it kind of helps me keep them organized of all expecting arrays underneath each one of the next level of applications. So, okay, so I'm going to get all this piece out of here for now. We'll worry about the header in a few minutes because there are some changes on the header. I'm not worried about these right now because we're not even going to do that part of it. So we're going to use some of this stuff. Yeah, we're going to take those. And we don't need published. Blah, 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 blah. Do we want to know what domain it came from? I'm going to leave those in there for the export only so I can log where it was sent from when it happens. So that will be just a little piece on that side, but I'm not actually going to save those pieces like domains. I don't need that either, but I'm not going to save those particular pieces when I set it on the other side. So let's get rid of some of this stuff here. Okay, so these are important. We have the template name, description, and tag that are used by the templates. Graphics ID. Okay, so what I'm doing, just so you can, I'm doing kind of a mental version of it, but let me show you what I'm doing. These are the fields that are coming from here. I want to know where they came from, what they are, and just a little bit of background of what I'm getting when it arrives to me. So from there, okay, so we have tags. Then we're going to need the texture ID, texture path. No, yes. Yeah, we're going to need both of those because we're going to need to download the texture after the fact. I'll worry about commas at the end of the lines when they're done. So that takes care of those. Right now I have a sky dome. I'm going to save those, but we're actually not using those at the moment. Don't worry, I'll worry about these names in a minute when we get them all down here. So we can get rid of some more of those. We have a ground position. This has to do with the water level for the scene. And then we have the water position. And water position basically counterbalances where the ground position is. So if water position is -1, then I know don't even draw it on the scene. If it's a 0, then I know put it on the scene. So there's not a whole lot of difference between where the water position sits. It's you move the ground out from underneath the water being at ground 0 for the XYZ coordinates. And so let's see, we have a gravity setting. So if you're in space, we will get that gravity setting, and none of the rest of that matters. Okay, we're going to not need this. I'm going to So then we're going to start piecing together what's getting returned as the response. Do we have the response? No, we do not have. Z response is going to be an array also. That'll be the actual, the full response packaged up, ready to go. Okay, and so Z response is what we're building through this whole thing. So when I come in here and I create, well, I'm going to do this the easy way. I'm going to do a copy of each one of these arrays, drop them here for a minute. They're not going to stay there, but we're going to do this. For each one of them, we're going to add them as part of the array of what we give back. Bless you. Okay, and we're going to do the community grids. We'll do the action zones. And we'll do the community molds. Community molds is probably going to be the longest of the bunch. The biggest data will actually be the uploads, but we'll work on that. I have a couple plans of how to get that across, no problem. We've already worked out the process with downloading them, so it's kind of just sending it the other direction instead of this direction. Now, this process, just to give you kind of an overview of what it's going to do, you're going to set it to do it, it's going to send a signal to my server saying which ID you want to grab and where you're coming from. It's going to send a security key with it. And once that happens outward and it goes to my server, then from my server, it's going to use that security key to come back and grab your actual items. So that basically we've wrapped the security through the whole thing, and you can send something to me, but only if you request it from your side, and then it goes back to my server. So that's just in a nutshell how the process is going to run. For now, what we're doing is we're building all these arrays. The other piece is this. We have this in here. We have add connect header, which is defined right here, and I have a couple different versions of the header that we can use, and in this particular case I'm going to copy that and I'm going to make this add connect this is going to be WalkTheWeb header, and purposely I'm naming it this way because this is the one that's going to allow the origin to be 3dnet.walktheweb.com. So we're basically being very specific about which, I guess I could have done available. We have a tag. That's why I did it that way, because I can tell it exactly which. Okay, let's not make a new one out of this. We will just pass this header, which will give it. Oh, that's only pulling its own domain. We didn't pass any other variable in there. If this is true, then we're sending it out to everybody. Otherwise, it's this. And when we do a connect header right now, we're sending the term false. Yeah, I know. You know what? I'm going to keep it. I'm going to do what I was doing a minute ago. I'm going to give it a separate header, only because these are going to be very specific. We're going to say the control origin 3dnet.walktheweb.com, and that's the only place that this one's going to be able to receive from. We don't need that part now. And okay, we're going to do a get. That's all it's going to allow, and it's going to allow this here from this domain. So okay, now that we have that in place, this is the one we want to use on not that page. Wait a minute, did I just do what I think I just did? Okay. That's what I get for starting an afternoon. Do you see what I just did? I created a community page. This is the one I'm working with to do all these changes and stuff. And then I overwrote the one that I wanted to save because I left them both open when I was working with it. Okay, so since I did a copy of it before we started, I also keep backup copies, but just because of that, we're going to, we're going to take all that information. We're going to come over here. I'm going to start up here, paste all that information in, and now from here down to there. And if I break this, then I do have I do have my other version of it from my backups that I can pull, but that should be intact. Yeah, we're all good. Okay, so now, like I should have done in the first place, shut off community so that it is only using the one version that I'm working with. Now this is the file I'm working with, and it's in the right place. Now what this header does is that will keep other scripting browsers from grabbing this page and downloading it. A little bit of security. It's not the only security we'll do, but that's a good one for cross-script browsing, making sure that it doesn't get pulled from other scripts from other servers. Okay, so we have that one in place. And okay, you know, I could roll those into a different, I know, as I'm thinking about it. I could roll those into one, and instead of saying available true or false, I could say header type, and then we can actually just name them which ones we need to go to, since I didn't do anything else but that. Let's go ahead and do that. That's cleaner, one less chunk of code, any chance I get. Plus I can see there's going to be other reasons that I make this header go to other places later on, including you may have some need for that, and I can put a hook into this section and we can actually work with that from your sites too. So we'll take this, we're gonna say we're gonna say we're gonna make available available to, I know that's a weird thing to call it. Just say domains. I know I don't like using domains because we have too many domains. Well, available domains. Available domains. Okay, so that would be our list of available domains. If we bring those in here, then basically we can say available domains right there and just physically tell it which domains are available as we go in. It can be an asterisk when we want it to be all. You know, that kind of works in the code for me, so let's go ahead and do it that way. We'll make it, oops, helps if I use the same tick marks around it. We don't need it to be end of row because it's the end of the row. Okay, and we can, with my other naming, let's call it with a Z. The available domains, if you say it right. No, just kidding. Okay, so that way now what we're doing is we're either passing in our own domain name, which we will use that, or we're telling it which domain we can actually send in when we do this add connect header. So in this new case, when I say add connect header, what I want in here is, did I leave the space? I hope I left the space. Yes, I did. Okay, so I don't need a starting space. 3dnet.walktheweb.com. Okay, so that takes care of that one, but as you can tell, we have a whole bunch others here. We're going to go through these real quick, and we're going to change that to, but it's not the word this, it's connect page. Connect domain name will be the populated domain name for these. So we're going to just change false to that. And this is actually a more comprehensive solution. Any chance I get to find one that can be reusable code instead of creating new functions for everything, I try to do it. This tends to be the simplest way of doing it. The other part is later on, if we decide that we want a certain page to be exposed to more than just this one page, then, or more than just our own site, which is what I'm doing right here. Notice I'm sending my own domain name back into there to allowing the site to be hit from my own domain name. So when I want to open that up and allow it to be browsed from another server, then I can put an asterisk there, or I can put, I can decide which pages I want to expose out to other servers, which we'll be doing probably by next week. We'll be going through those particular pieces and making sure they have the parts we need. But they'll be able to go to different servers, and that's how we interconnect and make them browse from one server to the next. So this one is community. Where did it go on this page? It moved since I searched for it. There it is. Okay. And this one here. This one. And we're getting there. I could have done a search and replace on all these, but I'm already 3/4 the way through them now, so I'm almost done. Bear with me a few more minutes. It's each one of these connect pages is what it is. Currently we have them all locked down. Well, like I said, that'll change. That'll change sometime next week when we test those parts of this. Okay, so I'm going to, let's close out a bunch of these different sites we don't need open right now. Close all the right. There we go. Okay, so we've now set the header to be from the other site is where it gets called, and we know what it's going to include. It's going to include all these different arrays, and it's going to send the response there. The next thing we need is to make sure that we're getting all the fields that we want. And notice I've handled special characters already so that if there's a single quote in the name and a double quote or something like that, it takes care of the special characters. Okay, so snapshot ID, I'm not going to worry about that at the moment, but that'll be handled shortly. That'll be handled when we do the uploads page because the snapshot is an upload file. There's a couple more things like texture ID is the name of the file here, texture path. I want them to be the names of the fields that I'm actually sending instead of friendly names that I use in the code or the versions as they were distributed down in, amongst the object array. Okay, so those are the fields. We're not worried about analytics. We have published domain and those, but we're only going to use those for tracking. User ID, I do want to know what user ID sent it, so I am going to track where this came from so that we give them credit, saying that, by the way, you are the person that built that particular item and you'll get credit for your work. So user ID, we need position XYZ. Okay, let's put that position, scaling, rotation. I'm gonna put it right here. Start with position. Okay, copy that. Scaling. And we'll get the Y and the Z's correct here in a second. And rotation. Done this a few times, as you can tell, so I'm getting a pattern of how I do them. So we have X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, and Z. Okay, and then we do the same with the end of the rows. Z, Y, X, Z, Y, X, Z, Y. There we go. Okay, so that's position scaling. We have gravity already. I saw that down here at the bottom. Let's see. Gravity. We have texture ID is good. We have sky dome. You know what? I don't need the path because we're actually getting those from the uploads files, so that's a good one we don't need. Sky inclination. Here we go. We got to do all these sky stuff. You know what? I'm going to grab the sky stuff a little faster than that by grabbing communities. Let's see, where is all the sky stuff? Oh, I know where. It's in domain info. There's no reason to retype each one of these or copy paste them all when we already have a process that brought them out to everybody. So we can grab this right here. Just grab all those field names. Also, better chance that I won't mistype something. Okay, that takes care of those. We have template name already. We have share user ID. That's going to be my user ID, so I don't need to send those separately. That's if you've already downloaded something that was shared. Well, actually, that's tracking who in your group shared the item. You know what? Actually, I do want the shared user ID, because if you say you didn't share it and you built it and somebody else did, I'd like to know who actually did it. So I'm going to track that on my end just so that I have some type of logging going on, knowing where things came from and who did it. Let's see, share template date. That's when they shared the file, which is going to be on my side of things. I'm not worried about it. I can log when this comes across to me, so that doesn't need to happen on my end. So we're going to make sure that shared user ID, we're going to know because I'm going to set that up to be the current logged in user. So we'll play around with that one later on as we get to it. Description is already there. Whoops, I didn't mean to click it. Description, tags are there. Snapshot, ground position, water position, alt tag. Alt tag isn't really used at this moment at this level, but that doesn't mean it won't be. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And there's some store information, store and store URL. I'm not going to worry about that at a community level because technically those are buildings that are shopping stores. So I'm not going to worry that those are in there at the moment because I believe I put them there for a reason, but I'm not going to need them in here, I don't think. I'm not making a community store. I'm making a building within a community store. I don't care how big it is. It can be the size of the community. So there's no reason to load them as part of the community level. We'll keep those functionality to the actual building instead of community. Now, the one thing I have to do is, because this is an array, I need to make sure that there's a comma at the end of every line so that we're completing the array as expected. And there we go. So we have an array that includes, it'll be all 0 for the I level, the index level, but it is all of these values being pulled in there directly from the database as is, one row, and that takes care of that one. So the next thing is we're going to grab I'm going to grab this format here so that we're doing the same thing again. And this time we are going to do the connecting grids. Now the connecting grids, there's actually 2 connecting grids that I want to get. Let's see, we want Z connecting grids. That's the name of our array that we're working with. We've reset the value of index to 1 so that the connecting grids array starts over again. These connecting grids, there's 2 different levels of connecting grids that we're going to get. And I don't need a whole lot of them, but I need certain ones of them. So in a connecting grid, there's basically a couple different connecting grids for each building that we do. Let's pull up some data so you can take a look. For every community, there's one that does not have a parent, which means, that it is its own parent. Okay, that is the core connecting grid for which one we're using. Okay, so that helps with that. But when you share something out, when you do your initial install, I'm allowing you to choose a community, then a building, and it automatically puts the building in the community. So there's a connecting grid that always shows the parent, which is the community we're talking about, and then it shows a building. Now, communities can have more than one building. So what I need to do is I need to intuitively try to grab the best building location in that particular community. To do that, I'm going to go with trying to grab the building community, building in the community that was placed there first. Because usually when you build a community, you go, here's the prime beach property, here's the center of the community, or whatever it is, and it's usually the item that is dead center, best location in the place. So, and I only need one of those because I don't need to know that you put 10 different buildings into the community, because once somebody downloads the community, drops their first building in it, they can put buildings anywhere they want when they edit the community. In fact, that first building they could put into a community that has no building locations in it. So we have a little bit of leeway with that, but at the same time I want to make it real easy for people to, get started and go. So I want to look for the first of those plus this item right here. And because it's a child web, it means that I'm looking for the one that the parent web ID is blank and the child web type is community. Well, actually, child web ID is the ID of the community that we're working with right now. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to select everything from community grids where forget it, here's a little thing I didn't fix when I was up here, so let's fix that real quick. Okay. We didn't have an alias on there, and we didn't have more than one table, so there was no need for one. Okay, so we're going to get we're gonna get a couple things. First one we're gonna get is select everything from connecting grids where the child web ID equals our community ID and deleted equals 0, and let's see, and parent web ID equals blank. That will get us the single, and it is limit 1, so we're looking for the active single one that is available. Okay, there we have that, and then we're going to union, and now we're going to look for that second piece. I'm going to indent that just so I can see the difference between these couple rows. We're doing a select statement here, and we're doing a union, which I want to stand out when I see this statement so that I know what I'm grabbing. Okay, so now I'm looking for the parent web ID. Okay. The active pieces. Are you referring to while I'm typing and type, and this is a lot of it is how I indent things, also where I'm working in the code. I'm able to see the active pieces, like making this word union stand out. I made it in its own level of indentation. It keeps, when I see this statement, that word sticks out to me. Normally it's select from where all the keywords, and then everything else where it's like an and that are all part of the where clause would be indented even farther. So it kind of helps at a very quick glance being able to see exactly what you're trying to find. Parent web type in this case is our child web type. We're looking for a building, and this one I'm going to have to do a little. We're going to have to list out the fields, which is going to get a little bit more tricky here. Well, it's just going to get lengthy, but it's necessary because I need to get something by its date and sort it, and so we'll get it. But yes, the more meticulous you are in the way you code, the easier it is to find things as you're looking for them. So you have to pay attention to the way things are indented, the way the variables are named, the spacing between blocked areas, where they put comments. There's a whole bunch of little pieces here, but the biggest thing about it, and that's the reason you're going to see me do a lot of copying and pasting, is I can become more consistent and persistent with the way I type something out or the way it looks in code if I start by copying and pasting something I've already done, because everything's in the exact same order, everything's indented the same way, and then I just change the part that makes that page different. So once I get a page and I spend a lot of time writing new pages, I get them perfect. I get them the way I really want them to look. Then I'll take a copy and paste of that every time I want to create a page that does something similar. The first thing is, if you have an error in your page, it becomes very easy to check all the other pages that have that same format and find out if that same error exists and fix it. So you find one error and fix them all. So in this particular case, I have 20 different files in my connect directory? Well, every one of these I know have common file formats. The same thing for my functions, the same thing for my iframes, the same thing for the JavaScript pages and stuff. I have certain formats I use. Well, once you get used to doing them and you created them in your code, you can copy and paste one to create the next one. That means that you have a pattern. Now you just have to work on the details. The other part is, if I'm doing something and I go, ooh, I find something that, I've got something way to improve it, well, it's the same thing. Very easy to go back through each one of the connect pieces for, in this case, I'm working on the connect files, and I can go through and do that same improvement or enhancement on all of them at the same time. chair just gave out a little bit on me. Guess I'm bouncing around too much. My chair decided to make me look shorter. Don't want that today. No. It is Saturday. I'm allowed to slouch. No. Okay, so that's kind of the reason for doing that. Now, with doing this statement, one of the things I have to do is I need to know which one of the connecting grids for buildings in the community is your first building. Okay, so here's the dilemma. If you share a community, are you sharing the community, or are you sharing the community, every building that's in it, everything that's in it, which means I would have to transfer the building, each one of these files for every one of the buildings that are in it. I would have to transfer it for each thing that you put in there that are assemblies and placed into there. But what happens if you don't have the right to have shared that particular item? So instead of me grabbing a community and then just all of a sudden just grabbing everything that you have in it, I'm actually making it where you share the community. Now you can share the things, you can share the buildings, but we're piecing them out as the share. But then when people search for them, they search for the single item. If I wanted to copy a full community you created, you would have to first of all share the community, which is the scene. Then you would have to share each building and then each thing that was used in it. Then you would have to give me some type of, hey, by the way, check out this business plan of where I place things. And then I would have to download each one of those items and recreate the scene based on every part in it. Now, I'm sure that somewhere down the line, there's going to be a plugin. Somebody's going to create one that lets you do more than that. That's fine with me. That's, out of my hands for the starting business. That's the whole thing about open source. You're going to find tools. People are going to create things that they want, that they can use, and that they have. My goal is to make sure that you have your communities, buildings, and things, and you have ways of working directly with each one of those. And I'm doing some type of work to make sure that you have permission for each thing that you're trying to do. So we have connecting grid. Going down through the list, we have connecting grid ID. I don't need the past connecting grid ID because if you're sharing it, all I need to know is your ID that you've shared it. Blah, 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 blah. Because I wouldn't know if you copied it from another one from your machine and then you send it to me. I'll get an ID that I have no recollection of and it wouldn't matter to me. So I don't think that part really matters. When you share something, even if it was an enhancement off of a previous shared item, then that's that's kind of a chain of events of which piece it's recovered from and stuff. So we're not going to track it to that level at this point in time. I don't know if we'll ever change that or not. Parent web ID, parent web type. By the way, when I use the word web in here, for example, child web, parent web, when I say community, building, and thing, when I use the word web or webs, I'm talking about all three of those as a category. So webs are either a community, building, or a thing. So, okay. Do me a favor, crank up the fans and point them this way because I'm like dying over here. It is a little hot in Riverside today, and yeah, it's definitely a squatcha. Thank you. Oh, that's better. Thanks. Oh, so much better. Child web ID, child web type. Let's see. Then we have, we're going to have all this position stuff. Okay, I don't have them up there. Okay, so position X, position Y, position Z, scaling X, scaling Y, scaling Z, and rotation X, rotation Y, rotation Z, and load action zone Oh, that's load action zone ID. Make sure I get the ID in there or it'll give me ugly words. Alt load action. Okay, we got another one that's close to that. So we have alt and un and attach. Okay, so we have load action zone ID, then we have alt load action zone ID, then we have unload action zone ID, and then we have attach action zone ID. Okay, that gets us through all those. We have an alt tag. Now the alt tag in this case happens to be more valuable because the alt tag in this case tells it as an assembly what it is we're putting into another scene or something. So when I take a building and put it into a scene, I can put an alt tag on the complete building when you move your mouse over it, and it could tell you what that building is. This would help with ADA compliance and also with people moving around the screen and wanting to know where things are, because the page readers read the alt tags. So the more we create them, the more somebody with visually impaired or limited vision would be able to move their mouse around the screen and it identify what they're mousing over. So then they'll know to walk towards something. Eventually, I'd like to get it to the point that when you move your mouse over it, not only tells you what building, but it'll identify door, window, certain items on the shelves. If it's a shopping store, I want to be able to tell them where it is, what it is that they're seeing on their screen at any point in time. We may even allow it to tell it what distance it's at. So if you mouse over something, hey, 20 clicks in front of you, or whatever it is, we can tell it how far away it is as you put your mouse over it, so they'll know if they're standing next to it or if they're standing a mile away. So there's some things we can do to try to help that, and at some point in time, I'm going to love for somebody to jump in and actually help us test those kind of features and see if we can't do it. I wouldn't mind putting on, one day, when I get those ideas all in place, putting on a blindfold and seeing if I can walk around a city and figure out where to go. That would be a real true test. And I challenge anybody else to help me work on those type of items to make sure we can do some sort of ADA compliance and help people that have challenges. So we have a create date. Okay, so, yep, I just preached a whole bunch there. I'm going to get these items, create and update date, and update user ID. The reason I want those particular items is, yeah. Okay, so I want to grab what user created it, but also what user has updated it last. My reason for doing that is because it's another one of those statistic things. If I know who built it and who built how much of it and different things like that, it makes a lot of sense in what we're grabbing and how we're using it and stuff. So we're going to come in here. I'm going to change the select statement to grab all these values. The reason I did this is because in here, this is a tricky one. I only want the last item. So I need to do, first of all, I have parent web equals this, child web type equals this, and what I need is, we're going to do a select statement on here. You know what, I'm going to copy this over to SQL, and we're going to play around with this and make sure we get the statement right, because the more I test it now, the less we have to troubleshoot it later. So I'm going to drop that statement in here. I'm going to WalkTheWeb underscore. I'll grab this ID in a second. The reason I want to play around with this one and do it is because I need to make sure that I'm getting the one I want, and there's only one way. If I test it and get it, I can get the whole thing here. But okay, so this is going to be the ID we're testing, and I'm going to set up some data so that basically we are having to choose between multiple records. And what I'll do is I'm going to make a dummy copy of this one. We'll say copy row. I'm going to paste it here, paste row, and I'm going to change the ID. We're just going to call it ZZZ at the end. We're not going to worry about a pass connecting grid. That doesn't matter, but that'll help us determine which one we're getting. The parent web ID is this, and then I'm going to make up an ID on the child web ID for the building. Now this particular one, I'm going to put, instead of this date, we're going to put the, what's the date today? 14th. So by changing the date, the create date on this, now I should be able to determine which one's which. We're going to add that field. Oh, of course it didn't like something. What did I do? There was an error while applying the statement. Incorrect date time format. What'd I do? It didn't like the date time format. You know what? I can do even better than that. There's an easy way to do it. In the statement, we're going to put now so that it becomes the current date and time in here, and we don't have to worry about, oops, I thought I was highlighting that. Come on, highlight. We're going to submit it with the word now so that it applies with the current date time stamp. Why don't you give me a little red X? Okay, successfully applied to the database. Okay, so we now have the extra record in here that is identifying right here an extra building within the community. So when I test this statement right now, what I'm getting is, first of all, an error. Okay. We don't want limit on that part. I believe we can limit as part of the top part. No. Okay, we can't use limit in union. We'll have to make sure we're getting the right things there. There should only be one with the blank. There shouldn't be more than one record with that particular circumstance. We can do something that checks first if we need to, but I don't think we're going to need to. Okay. But that's part of validation on my end, so we can grab whatever they have. If they have a corrupt database, I'm not going to receive it into my database, or I'll scrub it and see what works and what doesn't. But we'll see. I can work on that code at a later time of what's going to be happening on my end of the game. But in this particular case, we have this here. We're going to be... Okay, so we have it grabbing this. But what we want it to grab is the very first of them. So let's see. I can say and. Let me think of how I want to do this. I know how to do it in Microsoft SQL, and I think MySQL will do the same thing. It's a little trick we used to do all the time, but let me see if this one works. And child web ID in. And then I'm going to do a select statement. What this is going to do is select web ID from, and we're going to grab it from the, I know, I've got the, oh, it's right here. We're going to grab it from this table where we want it to be where child web ID is building. Child web ID is building, and we need to know that the parent web ID equals this. We're getting back into the same thing that we already did here. I don't think I'm going to need, in fact, I don't think I'm going to need all that there. All I have to do is this piece here, because I'm already telling it to select down from this piece right here. So, or I can even do it from here. Yeah, I've got two places I can do this. I don't think this is going to work. Let me do it this way. We're going to tell it from this. No, that isn't going to work. Let me try where I was going. Okay, so I'm telling it to check for these particular items, and I'm going to say order by create date, which will get me the oldest one first, and then I'm going to say limit 1 on that. So now I'm only pulling the one child ID, web ID, from connecting grids where it's a child type building and the parent web ID is my community that I'm sending in here. Okay, so if I do this and it all works correctly, nope, it didn't like that. Okay, so it didn't like. Okay, so I got to use a grouping and use the word first. There's a couple ways of doing this. Like I said, I was familiar with I've done this through Microsoft SQL, playing around with it here. Doesn't support limit and in all, any, some, subquery. Okay, so if I change this to here and we put this here from that, CG. So now we're telling it to make this the actual table that we're calling it from. Now we don't need to do this piece at all. We also want and deleted equals 0 in case they deleted some and added a new one. I only want the one that's active. So let's see, did that do it? Unknown column connecting grid ID. Oh, I need select everything. And we now have just the two records we want. Okay, so I did the select statement from the combining part, and that will allow it to union this item with this item. And notice that it is the oldest, the very first building that they placed in the community that has not been deleted. That's how I'm deciding it. That's where it's coming from. Okay, so now using this statement, I'll do some formatting when we get it to the other place here, but copy that, and we're going to paste it here. And let me clean this up now. First thing is the tables, we use this prefix because we don't know what prefix they used when they set it up. That, by the way, just if you haven't been familiar with that type of statements, what that does is it allows us to put more than one of these databases in the same database, and each one would have a different prefix before the table names. So this one, for example, is WTW underscore, and every one of my tables used by this particular instance of my code will always have that in front of every table, including the plugins that come in, as long as they coded them right, obviously. So then if I need to, let's say I'm at a hosting solution and I'm only allowed one database, but I need to host two websites, I can use the same database again and then change those first letters instead of WTW underscore, and I can actually set them to something else that I want it to be, and I'll be able to have both of them in the same database, yet a clear view, because even when they sort in the table listing, it'll be a clear view of which tables you're dealing with is part of which instance. So it allows you to have multiple instances in the same database. Cool feature, cool functionality. So now I'm going to go ahead and indent this. We're going to indent some things here. I do my normal indenting so that I can see where things are coming from and how it all comes together. Okay, so now we've grabbed that particular our connecting grid with all of its various parts, and we've gained two records that we wanted. We want the first record is the one that basically is the community itself, and then we want the first building if it exists when they share it. Okay, so now if I come in here and okay, so we have, first of all, we need to bring back these fields up here, and pass them into the different parts down here. First of all, I only have one field, the alt tag, that is a name that a user can type that could possibly want to use this particular format. So I'm not going to worry about that just so. In fact, we need it to be on the alt tag down here anyway. So we're going to do this and make it alt tag. Okay, so we have alt tag down on the bottom of our row down there. Now I can copy and paste. Oh, notice we also have position and scaling. So let me do 4 more above that. I'm just trying to reuse some of these so I can copy and paste into them without having to retype every one of them. So we have connecting grid ID. Now we have parent web ID. And that's the name of the field. We have parent web type. Okay, we have child web ID. Child web type. And then we have all these position ones. Notice position, scaling, rotation. So the next one after that is here. So position, rotation, scaling. Then we're going to start here with this one. And we have alt. I'll teach you how to use all these things as we release it and do some more videos. But for now, just putting the various pieces in place. Okay, and helps if I read them in my mind when I'm doing them. Okay, so we have this, and then we have alt tag, and so I'm going to put that alt tag one right there. I kind of like leaving them in the same order just so I have some type of, I have attached twice. Okay, let's get rid of that second version of that. You guys probably watched me do it too. I didn't hear anybody yelling. No. Alt tag, now I have create date. I just want to know little stats about what people are giving me. Create date, also create ID, can tell me who did it. I can find out if the person who shared it is the same as the person who created it. I can also check to see if the person who updated it is the same person who built it, and so on. So that kind of gives me a little bit of user stats about the items. Okay, that takes care of that one. We now have connecting grids in here. And so now on to the next one, action zones. Action zones, they're going to be a lot easier than this particular one. Action zones, I'm going to copy blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter which one I start with. We'll start with this one. Oh, helps if I get it all. I'll go through and clean up the notes afterwards because you notice I'm copying and pasting notes and they don't actually say what I'm getting at the time, so they're not the correct ones. So that'll definitely be cleaned up here. And we're going to, this is the one we're doing here. Like I said, we'll get the notes in the end. Okay, so this particular one is action zones. And this is actually T-I-O-N zones, action zones. Okay, and we have action zones there. Now, this particular one, we're going to need anything where the action zone, where their community ID, this one becomes pretty easy because this one uses community, building, and things. So we know which action zones are part of a particular item based on community, building, and thing right there. So with that in mind, it becomes a lot easier to grab a single item. And there's a whole bunch of names in this one. But like I said, if it's not deleted and if it's, we don't need that limit one, we're not grabbing one, we're grabbing all of them. Okay, so action zones with the community ID equals that. So action zones, we have, I'm going to put a number of these up front here because we're gonna grab these in place. Action zone ID. Then we have, we're not going to worry about past action zone. We have community. We're going to get building and thing. I could, you know what, let me go ahead and type them all once because going back and forth is going to make it more confusing than it needs to be. So we have building, thing, attach mold ID. Mold ID. Then we have load action zone ID. Okay, load action zone ID. We have action zone name, which I actually want to use one like this on that. So we'll action zone name, because people get to name their own action zones. Anytime somebody names their own stuff, in case they use a single quote or double quote in the name, I always do HTML special characters and make sure I'm dealing with what I'm, getting what I'm expecting out of it, and it doesn't interfere with our putting single, tags around something or whatever else. So we're just making sure we get what we need to. So action zone name, action zone type, action zone shape. Action zone shape has to do with if it's going to be a rectangle or a sphere or whatever object we use to determine the distance that it activates. Okay, so I'm just going to move the cursor down there so I can keep my eyes going to the right place. And it's movement type. And then it's action zone position X. Truth is, I should be chopping some of these names down because there's no reason for us to be using an action zone position when it technically is the position of what I'm talking about since it's in the action zone table. So maybe I'll work on renaming that one here at some point. Yeah, we'll see about that. And just because we're gonna have to copy and paste them anyway, but action zone scaling, and that's a X, Y, and Z value there. And then there's action zone rotation, and that's another X, Y, and Z. I'll get the second values in a minute. Let's continue down the list. Okay, it has create date and stuff at the bottom. So this one, after action zone rotation, we have axis position X. Okay. And then, of course, from that, we have a Y and a Z. And next we're going to have, I don't think I'm going to have too many more things that we name on our own, so I'm going to go ahead and get those out of the way. Okay, we have the axis position and axis rotation. We do not have a scaling of it. The scaling's done in sync with whatever you're working with, so we don't have to worry about the scaling of the particular axis. It's going to be to scale for whatever you scaled the whole object. So that's all fine. And so we have those. Next, axis rotation, we have swing axis. And then swing degrees. Swing direction. Some of the stuff I did a long time ago. Rotation speed. Yeah. Swing, I could have done swing speed just because I did swing direction and swing degrees and swing axis. I could have said swing speed. That would have made sense. So I can see a couple of these that I probably will go through and correct some of the naming. Parent action zone ID. Each one of these have a purpose. JS function. And we have JS parameters. So you can actually send in your own JavaScript parameters and make them work in there. I'm going to chop the rest of this because I already typed out those words right here. And since I'm not collecting anything deleted, I don't need to include deleted in what I pass through here. Okay, I have commas at the end of every row, and I need to make sure building thing, copy that, copy, paste. I know this is the tedious work of a programmer, but it's all important. So working our way through it. We are going to be dropping this out open source sometime this month. So that's the goal. That's where I'm heading, and I will get it done. Before the month's up, you'll be seeing this open source. Then we'll continue to work on it as open source, and we'll take feedback from people. We'll all be testing it and trying it and connecting up different things. We'll have some fun with it. But that's the goal. That's where we're heading. That's what I'm going to be working on. So definitely open source. Everybody gets a copy of the code, and you can host your own 3D websites. Makes it real easy to create and maintain. The good part is not only, okay, a programmer can go in there and create a 3D website. Let's say you wanted to create a shopping cart for a customer, a 3D shopping experience. Well, you know what? A programmer can go in there and create that without too much trouble. The thing about it is, not only do you have to create the building and everything that's in it and all the different pieces, but you also have to create a way that they can administer it themselves. Otherwise, you've created a nightmare for yourself as a programmer. But with doing this, using a 3D CMS, and then you custom build and make your own things in it, and let me remind you, you can use the 3D CMS to build things. You can also create things in Blender and export them to here, to Babylon. This is using a Babylon engine behind it, so you can also create things natively in Babylon and then drop them into the scenes. So you can still be as creative as you want to be as a programmer, but then just drop them into scenes and not have to code every last piece, including the administration of a website, to give it to a customer. So it makes it very easy to be able to sell and work for customers and build these different objects, build different things for them, create full experiences of different stuff. You can have full on, create these brilliant places. That's the goal behind all this. Okay, so I'm basically helping all programmers be able to make more money by making it fast, easy, rapid start of doing 3D things for other people. Awesome, huh? Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what it's about. So, okay, so our next one is community molds. I'm going to take a copy of this particular one. It's got the union statement up here, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's go with the latest one we just did. Yeah, foundation sounds good to me. So we're going to take a copy of this one and put it here. And this one is going to go to connecting grids. I mean, not connecting grids, I'm sorry. Community molds. That's where we're going next. And so we're grabbing all the community molds. And we need that to be community molds here. And now we'll go through, let me get the table structure over here so that you're seeing the same thing I am. And this one is the long display of all the different fields as part of the community molds. Molds are the longest tables. They always are. Community mold ID. I'm just going to go through these. We got a community ID. We have a load action zone ID. Then we go shape. We're not going to have a name for anything for a little while. I'm just going to tuck this down below. I just want to have one here I can grab and use. I know I'm going to have a couple things that have names that were typed by people, so just to keep it in place. Load action zone ID. Then I have shape. and covering, and okay, we have a section up here that we already did. Position X, Y, Z, rotation, and scaling. I don't want to type any more than I have to, so we'll copy and paste that down here. And that goes after, wait, wrong one. Oh, was it? Nope, it isn't. Okay, right after covering, then we have shape, okay, so position, scaling, rotation. Now we need one called Special 1 and Special 2. And now we have U offset and V offset. Then we have U scaling, or U scale, and V scale. Okay, then we have upload object ID and object folder, object file, graphic level. This allows you to actually set the graphics to a higher level for certain objects, each object individually. Really cool function. Texture ID. Then we have texture bump ID. And then we get we have texture hover ID. I don't need the texture hover by itself. We're going to actually get rid of that field. I was just finishing going through there, but that particular one's going to be gone because once we have the hover ID, we pull the value of the path based on that. So I don't even think that's used in the code anymore. We'll double check that and get rid of it. So next we have video ID. And I know there's a lot of these in here. So video poster ID. And then we have the diffuse color, and it's diffuse color red, green, blue. So if I copy that, it's diffuse color red, and then a G for green and a B for blue. Remember the old RGB monitors? Same idea. Diffuse color, then we have specular color R. Copy that, and it's RGB once again. Okay, then we have emissive color R, and I'll copy that one again. And we have G and B. And let's see what else we have. We're going to scroll this up because we've got a lot more to go. As you can see, a whole nother page of possible items in here. Okay, height map. And it's height map ID. We have that next. We have a couple of those that were used for creating paths and dropping them in here, and now I'm using strictly IDs that go to the uploads table so we know where they all are in one place. Can track our different stuff easier that way. Now we have a texture RGB with the ID. URE. This is R ID, and I'm going to do a few of these. So it's R, G, and then B. Then it's R, G, B with texture. So RGB, then it's texture bump R. So it does bump maps. Yes, we can do bump maps within our images. You see this a lot with textures, like with stone paths. I did it. There's a number of places where we can do these different type of paths, and they are different type of textures where they actually look like they're reflecting light from different angles. It gives you a really cool 3D effect on something that is actually a 2D image. So they become pretty cool. For the people that use these things, they're definitely good quality ways of doing that. Okay, so now I'm going to, since we have a sound, no, that's not the one I want. That actually downloads the sound. I'm going to get community molds over here. Recover item, I believe. Nope, not that. It's the molds recover file. This one here has a lot of these files, and I don't want to type. I should have grabbed every one of these, but one of the ones I'm going to get is all of this sound stuff. So we have, we did sound ID. We don't need path because that's being calculated by where we're getting it. But we have sound name through here. Let's drop those here. And after sound ID, we're going to put each one of those here. And all I have to do is add the word sound to the beginning of each one of them. A little easier than typing. Okay, less chance of error. Okay, we have web text. And this one actually is going to be using this, and so is web style. Web text and web style, this is actually used for my blogging stuff that I do. You can actually put things in there and it'll show up on the blog. People can type things into it and it goes. I played around with it, got it to work, and I've been sitting with it on the side for a little bit just so I can get the rest of these pieces in place. But that will come out as a that'll come out as a plugin after the fact. OPACATY. Okay. Site orientation. Okay, and let's see, billboard. We have a lot of stuff in here. And I don't want to overwrite these because I know that they're down there at the bottom of the list someplace. So we're getting there. We're getting there. We're almost there. Bear with me. Bear with me. We're almost there. Okay, under billboard we have... okay, that's how many we have. So under billboard, water reflection. And then we have receive shadows. Yes, I did look to see if I put E before I or I before E. Subdivisions. Okay, min height. And a max height. Okay, check collisions. And is pickable. So you can have things like ground and sky that are not pickable. The person using the scene, when they go over them, they actually aren't pickable, so they don't become a selectable object. We do that with a lot of stuff. I'm purposely telling it which ones to make pickable and which ones not, but this is an override type command where you can tell it to do certain things. Action zone ID. And CSG, this is cool stuff. Mold ID. This is a way you can combine molds to make different things. You can cut one shape out of another. CSG action is that function if you're going to do a subtraction, if you're going to merge two objects together, or if you're going to do the intersection of two objects. That's kind of cool too. Like if I wanted to make a saddle, I could actually use the intersection to determine which pieces intersect between two different shapes, like two different cylinders. And then once I get those two pieces, I can even cut something out of it using a third shape. So kind of cool stuff. Alt tag, which I thought I had down here, but we're going to do alt tag with one of these. And we'll do alt tag. Since people type alt tags in, we want to make sure that we've checked them for special characters. Physics ID, I have not switched those around too much yet, but I can make things physics specific depending on what you've created, so we'll talk about that later. Product ID, okay. Slug. I know, these are some of the... These have to do more with stores and putting things in stores, but that's still... It's still something. It's still part of it. Okay, so that gets us all those values. We already know we have through there. Let's get these updated. And we're getting there, CSG, and we have the action zone ID is pickable. Okay, check collisions. So we're building 3D internet. We're going to have this out in open source later this month. We're coming up on it because I keep saying later, but there's only 2 weeks left in the month. So in the next 2 weeks, you're going to see me release this as open source. It is a full-on 3D CMS for being able to create 3D websites. That's creating scenes and creating buildings and gaming areas and adding all kinds of extra stuff. But it's going to allow, we're going to set it up so that we can allow plugins and people can actually create their own plugins so that they can, instead of creating everything from scratch, all you'll have to do is create the functions of the pieces that you want to show off. So let's say you're great at making cars. You can build the world's best car and people can just download it and click and put it into their scene. Now the best part is we're talking freemium plugins, so you give them some for free just like WordPress does. Yet if they pay the extra fee, then you can unlock additional functionality. You can either, let's say we unlock the Ferrari and you can drive the Ferrari now, or if you give them a Ferrari, then maybe they unlock the ability to allow passengers and carry more than one person in the Ferrari. So there's different stuff we can do, and it's up to your own imagination what you want to create to allow people to add into their scenes. But I'm talking things like Ready Player One, being able to have these full-on games and stuff that are created by different people on the internet. So that's where we're going, that's what we're building, and that's what I'm releasing. So I want to make it where a lot of people can make a lot of money. I want to make sure the programmers are getting paid, right? Yay, programmers. Gaming programmers, yes. We're going to start a whole new group of gaming programmers that want to do all this stuff and create things for everybody and make money at it. You know how many kids I heard growing up that said, I want to be a game programmer when I grow up? Well, this particular technology allows you to do just that. Be an independent game programmer and then use a section that is used by everybody. So we can all have a common technology we use. Copy that and paste that last one. There we go. Okay, so we can have a common technology where I can just create a component and then drop it out there and make it a popular component. Spend my time doing what I do best. So if that's creating a car, or if that's creating an animation, or if that's creating artwork, or if it's building buildings like an architect, whatever piece it is, I can do my part the best I can do it, and I can get it out there while anybody else can drop it into their scenes. So it's a whole new way of building things and doing them. Now for businesses, this is really cool. You can actually have like 3D shopping stores and everybody can drop them into different communities. So you can actually have one community over here, let's say there's a golf course that people play the game, and you can drop your store next to the golf course. And then over here on this other scene that somebody else has, you talk with them and negotiate whatever you want to do. Next thing you know, you're dropping your same store into their scene. You maintain one store in one location, but yet it can be placed in multiple communities. Now, you want to know how well they're doing? We do Google Analytics, so you can actually see in Google Analytics if the building was loaded from far away, closer, so they see the details of the outside of the building, or if they actually went inside. And and loaded all the inside objects. So it gives you really great feedback. Now the thing is, you may not have a store, you may not have anything like that, but are you a programmer or do you want to have your own business? How would you like to be able to create 3D stores for businesses? Really cool. Use this tool. You hand it over to them after you build the building and they can maintain their own store. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've already got the wheel together. But I'm ready to do things like Ready Player One, where everybody can go in there with their own avatars, jump on the internet, walk around, explore, find some different places where you can go game, you can play, you can have fun, you can race cars, you can race cars, you can do paintball, you can do, we'll have all these different things out there. And different developers all over the internet can program them and make money for doing them. It's a distribution system of how you can get your code and your pieces out there to the public. So that's what I'm building. Yes, that's what I'm building. Okay, so we're gonna grab mold points next. I'm gonna grab this big long thing here, and technically there's an easy way to do mold points because we already have a function that grabs all the mold points, I believe. So all I have to do is go find that one, and I can use it to doctor this one up. So we want to do mold points, and that's going to be building the mold point array. And like I said, I'll do all the text comments afterwards. So in mold points, these particular ones, let's see, do mold points, did I do them to have a key field or not? Mold point ID, and then it does mold ID. So we haven't determined if it's coming from a community building or thing in this particular table. Not a problem. We've already done this code once before. So molds by web data. Okay, I'm going to grab it from this other site because I know I have a list of all the mold points fields. We're going to open that one. We'll get rid of that. Okay, so we're going to get. Okay, there's not that many fields. That part's the easy part. And we're going to paste this here. Let's leave the create and so we'll put it to right there. And that gets the names of all the different parts. Now I need the SQL statement. I'm going to go down here. There's just no reason for me to rewrite the SQL statement when I already know what it is and it's right. Get mold points. Where am I looking? Get mold points. This particular one, okay, it is a union statement once again, and it is checking 3 different parts based on what it has. I only need one of these because this particular one can let me throw anything at it if it's a building, community, or thing. All I need is the one for the community. So we don't have to write the statement again. We can just copy and paste that here. We will change the table prefix, and that goes right here and here. Then we're also passing the, okay, let's see, we can just line our code a little bit. We are also passing this community ID here, so I need to do that, which we are passing on every one of these. I'll just copy and paste again. That's what we're passing. And now that will get us the different mold points, and it will give us the values and create the array for mold points, which is going right there. Next one, we have uploads. This one gets a little trickier. Okay, so for uploads, I've already done this going, see, the reason I have these in this other connect directory here on my server is because we have this going the other direction where I'm the one giving you the file. So since I'm giving you the file already, getting them from here, I'm giving you the file. That's not uploads, that's upload. Okay, so this particular one, this is what we're returning. And I'm not going to give the file data. I believe I'm using file path on everything in my directory so far, and I'm going to continue to write them and do that way. I'm only going to send the file data if the file path is not valid. So I don't want the path. I don't want it to take too long to upload the files and too long to upload any file data that might be in the database. And if you put it in the database, chances are it was put there because you wanted some type of security on it. So I don't want to mess that up, so to say the least. Okay, so this is where we get probably the ugliest statement of them all. To do the SQL, I'm going to just, first of all, knock that out of the way so that I can place one there. And we're going to grab the upload fields, which are these. Okay, we're going to leave create date and stuff on there because I know I'm going to end up using those. And then we have these fields, which are all the way to there. This one's going to be a little trickier on working it, and it does work. I was able to send the files from me to you this same way, so I'm not going to worry about it too much, but there will be some cleanup on this particular one, and I'm going to get the SQL statement here in just a minute. But I want to look at the uploads, folders, path, okay, and I don't need this hide or if it's a stock image or not. That part I'm not going to worry about. I will get the rest of this though. Okay, so we have everything from, well, let's see. Let's start with, let's do them in order. Upload web, we'll get those. I kind of want them in order so that I know what I'm getting. Oh, also this is the loads. Okay, so we're not overwriting a different array that we're expecting. Through thumbnail, then we need user ID. This is the person who uploaded the image to begin with. Okay, file title, which we're going to make sure we use the same names, just like file name. I know there's a file title and a file name. One is the physical file name that's going to be on the actual drive. The file title is something somebody can type that would actually, could be a friendly name for it. Like if you're searching for images, it's the name that you would use on that particular search. So can be a little nicer name. Okay, we have file path, file data, image width and height. Okay, and I don't need, if it's a stock image or not, I don't need hide date or hide it and stuff. That's not going to matter for this particular purpose. I'm not trying to hide them when I do it. That's a local setting for your stuff. If they've been checked, that's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother thing. So I'm not going to worry about those values. That should get you the parts written to my database. Now, or that part sends what it needs to. But on this part, okay, so here, the query. This is where I am going to get the actual query that we use to do this statement, which is, I think it's just get uploads. Get uploads, load level. Okay. Gotta make sure I'm getting all the images. I think I am. So, okay, get uploads by community. That's the one I want. Alter store procedure. And this whole thing is what does that piece. So it has, do I have the thumbnail? I am not grabbing the, okay, I am not grabbing the image of the snapshot here. So I might, well, first of all, don't put it there. Let's use the one I'm doing. Okay, we're going to put this here. This is a very large statement. We're going to make sure that we get the tables named properly. Okay, we have uploads, inner join from community molds on, and then there's a whole bunch of ons. Okay, that makes sure we grab all those. Then we have a left join web images. And this part right here, I'm almost guaranteeing isn't working right. So I will be looking at those separately and probably pulling them in at a later date. But that's, I'm going to keep it in here for now because it is doing a part of this query. Okay, that should get us that much. Okay, so that should get us through the uploads. The next one is upload objects. I'm going to copy one of these little sections back here just so that we have the format. And copy that. Put that here. And this one is going to be upload objects. So we'll change it here because that's the array we're building. We'll get the values shortly, but to begin with, let's see what we're dealing with. We don't need that open anymore. Okay, so we have upload objects. Chances are I may not even have anything in this directory yet, but it's okay. There's not a whole lot of fields. This one has an object ID. The object ID would be used in the community molds. So let's do a select statement. Here's the relationship. We have community molds. We have object ID. I remember seeing it. We typed it. And it is... Am I just not seeing it? Okay, upload object ID. There it is. I went too far down. Okay, so the upload object ID, what that's doing is I'm adding something to a scene, and I told it that it is going to be a Babylon object. So basically, I've exported it from Blender. So it could be something with animation, and it can be a full-on object. So what I do is I tell it by object ID which object it is, and then I have some certain properties that are related to it. So in this particular case, what I'm doing is I'm actually grabbing that object from here based on, well, we have to get the object. So let's see. The thing is, it's going to be based on the community molds. Community molds do have the community ID in that table. So notice I have mold points and community molds. That's the reason I grabbed this particular table. In this idea, we have upload objects. Copy that to here. And then we have, and we'll call it upload objects 1, just so we have some type of format for it. And then here, we're going to need, the ID is going to be upload object ID, and that's going to be with upload object ID here. Okay, so once we've connected those, now we know this community ID and its IDs that aren't deleted is going to be what's brought back from here. It's an inner join, so we're only bringing back the objects that are being used currently in the system. And then we'll do this upload object on that. And community ID can't be blank, so we're not trying to do some weird pulls on there. And now here, what I need it to be is the various upload objects that I have, the fields in the table. So let's go to here, and we have upload object ID, then we have user. user ID will tell me who uploaded it, so I'm going to go ahead and transfer that anyway. Object folder, and then object file. Okay, stock. I don't need to know that it was your stock object or not if it's in there. That has to do more with if I gave you an object that's stock at the beginning opposed to what things were created afterwards. When you go to a page and you're searching for things, I show you stock by default, so it's kind of just a little flag for, you know, certain pieces. But we will get the, oops, helps if I do that on there. And so then we're going to get the create date and create user ID, update date, and this is our tracking, just trying to see if somebody, you know, modified something after it was originally created. We like to give credit to the people that originate things. We also like to give people credit to who polished it off and made it look really good at the end. So I like to track them both and give credit to both where credit is due. So that's that. Okay, so now this table should get us everything we need. We're combining those two tables on upload object ID. That's all spelled right because it highlighted them both when I clicked it. They're not deleted items, and we're good with the community ID. Okay, so that gets us back that, and the only thing we have to do is take these fields, copy them, paste them down here. And that will give us what we need here. Object file, create date, and we have create date and stuff already there. So there's not a whole lot of files in that table, but that's an important one. And another thing I noticed is, for some reason, some of our tables don't have this. Oh, wait, actually it's in the middle. We do have it before everyone. Okay, just making sure. And now we're going to copy that last one, and we're going to paste this here. And I believe we're 2 tables away from finishing. So let's get this one, which is upload object animations. So once you've uploaded your object in our code, it allows you to identify where the animations are and tell them and hook them up to certain events on what they're doing it. So if you want it to be when it's clicked, or if it's toggle back and forth when it's clicked, or if you want it to let's say when you highlight over with your mouse, or if you want to, if it's a touch swipe or whatever, we have all kinds of elements or events already in place. How about if it's a avatar and you want it to be move one thing when it walks or when it walks backwards? It'll trigger those events and tell it what to do for that particular avatar. So it allows you to upload your own custom items and then use the full realm of stuff with it after the fact. Okay, so let's see if I can backtrack the path here. We have object animations, which are part of an object animation ID, which takes us back to what's here, which upload object, oh wait a minute. Okay, so upload object, that's the one I want. Upload object ID is our upload object ID we used in the other thing. So we've used that as another connector to tie in what we're doing, because you can have multiple animations per object, and then you attach it to a mold so it can be added to a scene. That makes it, oops, I hit that. Okay, fine. But here we go. So because of that, upload object ID is used in both tables. That ends up being our connector, and we don't have to rewrite half of the SQL statement. The only thing we have to update is the actual fields we want it to bring in. So up here, the very first one, object animation ID. So object animation ID, then we have the upload object ID, the user ID. Okay, so user animation name, Actually, it's animation name. I don't know where I still got to get user out of my head after saying it for the last one. Animation name, and then we have mold name part. This is cool because you can actually name a part from Blender that you created and how you named it, and tell it to be part of the action when you click on it in here. So you can tie the click event to a particular part of a Blender object that when you click it, what it'll do and how it'll react. So I've designed the code to be able to do that kind of thing. And then you'd say, like here, the mold event would be, I'm doing a click, I'm doing a whatever it is. And then you can tell me what start frame it uses and what end frame. So you can, from the Blender exported file, you can tell me exactly which pieces of the frame it uses. Then from there we have, okay, the animation loop. You can tell me if it loops or not, which is very cool. Speed ratio. So you can slow it down or speed it up. Animation end script. That's kind of cool because when it finishes doing something that isn't looped, so like if I click it and it does something, I can tell it which JavaScript to pull at the end of that animation. So it allows you to continue a loop and do something else. Set some settings. Animation end script. And I also let you pass a parameter with that. So kind of cool. Parameters. Okay, spelled that right now. Okay, and additional script. Now, additional script is when you start the animation if you want it to play additional script at the same time. Which means, for example, if I click something and it's going to start this animation, let's say I run a script that tells it to start playing a sound. Or if, well, I have sound attachments here, but let's say I want to synchronize it with something else. Or when you click this, 10 different things go off in your scene. Let's say it's a tripwire. You click something and now a mine goes off in another section of your scene. You can do these kind of game type functionality based on what happens. And so it really, I've tried to expand and give you as many options as it can give you. Okay, so we have additional parameters. Then we have sound ID and sound max distance. Okay, and that takes us through the rest of those. So you can also tie it to a sound. So let's say I start a walking pattern. I can tell it to start playing my sound walking so you hear the footsteps coming. That's the kind of stuff we've already set up in code. So yes, tie sound and animation. From Blender imported files. Yes. We do some really cool stuff here. Okay, so now with that, we're going to get each one of these files in place. And I know I've already overwritten one of them that I could have used. But I know I'm going to have an extra few handful of files here. Give myself a few extra to work with. Okay, we have this one. Then we have user ID, which I have. Animation name. Animation name, I want to give it... Anytime somebody can name something, I want to protect myself. Oh, that's the wrong one to do. That's add slashes in a 64-bit big thing here. I want to use this format. Just making sure I get all these pieces in place. So we're going to drop that in there so that we can do animation name. Okay, and after animation name we have mold name part, mold event, and start frame, and then end frame, Okay, animation loop. Okay. Speed ratio. Animation scripts. Let's see. Animation end script. And I'm going to need a few more lines here, so I'm just going to add a few more. Okay, end script parameters. Okay, and additional script. Additional parameters. Oh, I did it in the wrong place. I only missed by one. Okay, sound ID. And sound max distance, and that should do it. Okay, and that takes us to there, which now gives us uploaded animations, and we have one left, which is web images. So let's see if we can't grab web images and get them exported. I think they're actually not going to be too hard to grab because they have this section in here. Let me show you. Let me start by changing the name here so I don't. Okay, so web images, and now let's get a SQL statement that's going to get our web images. If I'm not mistaken, web images do have the actual community already labeled in them. Since, oh, community mold. Never mind, it has community mold ID. Okay, so because it's done through community mold ID, we need this 2 degree of pieces here. Then we're going to say here is web images. We'll call it WI1 for web image table 1. Okay, so anywhere there's this, which I'm going to worry about this part of it first. Okay, so, and we're going to connect those based on community mold ID. See, because I'm working with the community molds, that's exactly which one we're going to be dealing with. So it's wherever they're interjoined, which means that they exist and they work this way. They're not deleted. And then all we have to do is name our files. So we'll start, you know what, I'm going to do this an easy way and just start by changing all these first because I know we have about the same number of files. Might be a couple more than we need, but considering it'll end with create date and create upload, you know, updated date and stuff, we're going to keep those anyway. So starting here, we have web image ID. Okay, then we have community mold ID. And I'm not going to worry about building mold or thing mold ID because we already know we do not have those in this particular thing. We have a user ID, so I'm going to leave that right where it's at. We have image index. The reason I did image index is because let's say you create something that has a slideshow, then you can have a whole bunch of images, put them as different indexes, and it'll allow it to choose which picture to go next. So you can actually create a box that has a slideshow that shows on it, and you can upload more images to it, and the slideshow will work. So it's really cool extra feature. I messed around with that when I was creating these scenes, and it really worked well. Image hover ID, and then we do an image click ID. So for each one of those in the slideshow, you can have a hover and a click. So that's kind of cool. You can set the graphic level. Now, JS function and JS for JavaScript. And JavaScript parameters. And we need an alt tag, which I'm going to grab from above because alt tags, like I said, have special characters in them. So we'll copy one of those and add. Oh, what am I doing? Alt tag up there. Alt tag down here is another story. What was I thinking? I forgot where I was at. WI1.alt tag. Okay, so from here, now let's get these fields in place down here. Like I said, we're going to need an alt tag, so I'm going to put that down here. I know I have more fields than I need. Okay, so web image, community mold ID. Now, community mold ID, when I do these in the table, there's actually community mold ID, then there's building mold and thing mold. I know that I'm only getting a community mold because it's coming from my table. But when I insert it, oops, I don't need to type the word mold a second time. When I insert it into another table, it will have the various pieces. So I want to at least reuse my code as being one that handles all three of them. So if I put building, thing, and community mold in there, then basically I can use one function that scrubs that data and can import it into the table without having to worry about missing field, or if it's a community, only do this field, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of helps me sort through and get the pieces I need. So, but I didn't need to pull them from the table because only the one exists. So we have image index, we have image ID, and we have image hover ID. Then we have image click ID, graphics level. Is that graphic? Yeah, graphic level, not graphics level. Okay, that's one of those things that I looked at it and read it wrong, but I wanted to make sure I didn't spell it wrong. Spell one word wrong, it blocks at you. JavaScript. And parameters. Okay, that takes care of those. We have alt tag and create and update. Okay, so that takes care of those. We technically have all the pieces to be able to call this item and get all these parts back. And just to really, well, no, see, I'm not, if I don't call it from the other website, then it won't let me call it because of the headers are only letting it come from that website. So I'm going to have to test it using the other website, and that other website isn't ready to call this code yet. So for now, oops, we do have a community ID right there that needs to be updated. Let's catch that while I saw it. Here we go. And so that's the community ID. Make sure I didn't do that any other place, because that would be an obvious error when it tries to run. Okay, we're good on the rest of these because we copied and pasted them all. Okay, so last thing I would do on here is I would tell it what the select statements are doing. So in this particular case, this is actually just selecting the community and add create community array. This particular one is select connecting grids, and it's going to be create connecting grids array. Okay, this one is going to be select action zones for the community and create. Seems redundant, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Create action zones array, and this one is going to be select community molds for the community and create community molds. Community molds array, two M's. Wouldn't have mattered. It's actually text, so at least it wouldn't have failed the code. Select mold points. Mold points are used if the mold itself, if the object that we created is a line or is a ribbon or is could be a lathe movement. It could be anything of those type of functions where it actually creates a bunch of points and connects them to create an object, a mesh. So we can have two paths and connect them different ways. So that particular way is a way of storing the paths that are used by a particular object. Okay, so let's see, what else do we have here? This one is, wait a minute. Oh yeah, this is mold points array. And that's create mold points array. Okay, and whoops. Select uploads. Uploads are your images or files that were uploaded to be part of that actual thing. So create uploads UPL. Oh, okay. LOADS. There we go. And upload objects, which would be your Blender objects more than likely. Upload objects array and select upload object animations. I'm going to cheat this time. A lot of letters. Create upload objects animations array. And we're almost there. Web images. Okay, and create web images array. Okay, so now we've marked what they're doing. We can even say in here, and basically I'm only allowing downloads from that shared site. That kind of secures your site for you. And we will add a comment here. Assemble JSON response. And that basically JSON encode it, and boom, it sends it out. So we've taken this whole process. Took us about 2 hours to do this one file. The great news is when I take this and I need to do the buildings or things next, it'll only take us about 15 minutes because we already have the format. We already have it hidden in all the right files. All I have to do is double check. It may not even take 15 minutes each, but all I have to do is copy paste and do some little quick things. And we can have this set up for buildings and for, let's see, this is called share. Helps if I type the name there. See if it comes up with an error. I want to be able to tell what file it came from, so that takes care of that. Okay, so I want to thank you all for joining me on this Saturday afternoon, and it's been another good day of getting some more code done. Another piece in the puzzle. We're getting it closer and closer to release. We're only a short time away from doing the full, our full video release, and so that should be soon, is what I'm looking at. I'll keep working on it every single day, and we'll get it out there to you. And then once we release it, I'll continue on coding, on streaming, and make sure that everybody can watch me do things, or give your input, or ask questions, or help direct us, or guide us in the way we need to make it all work. So anything we can do to make this work as the greatest product ever. We're going to create the world's largest game. How does that sound? Well, have a great day and have a great Saturday evening, and don't drive drunk. No. Okay, have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. We'll see you tomorrow.